Are we good to go, Sonia?
Yes, Chairman.
No, thank you. Thank you, members. Welcome to Rochford District Council's remote review committee meeting this evening, and welcome to anybody watching this via live stream. We'll start with agenda item number 1, which is apologies for absence. I don't believe there are any. Sonia, can you just confirm that?
No apologies received, Chairman.
Thank you. Agenda item number 2, substitute members. I don't believe there are any.
That's right.
Agenda item number 3, non-members attending. Sonia, can you just clarify the non-members attending this evening's meeting?
Yes, Chairman, I believe we have councillors FD, Wootton, Williams, Belton, Rowe and Smith visiting.
Thank you very much. Welcome to all of you. Agenda item number 4, which is the minutes of the meeting held on the 5th of January 2021.
Can I just ask a question, please?
You can, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm sorry, I can't see anything, so you'll have to forgive me. I'm having to use a phone because of the council equipment's failed. Just a query. We have quite a few portfolio holders attending, which is normally unusual. Review committee is meant to be relatively independent of the portfolio holders, other than when they're presenting. Can I just ask what the protocols are for this, if they're allowed to participate? Because they're not allowed to be on the committee, so just wondered if you could clarify that.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Mason. I do believe, if I recall, that I think this was mentioned at the last review committee meeting, and I believe Angela Law did confirm that portfolio holders are entitled to attend the meetings. Sonia, is that correct? I think I recall that being the case.
Yes.
Yes, it's the participation I'm querying.
The answer to that is that, as the chairman has confirmed, portfolio holders may attend meetings of the review committee, and if they're invited to speak by the chairman, they may do so. Otherwise, they attend in observing capacity.
Thank you for that clarity.
Thank you, Sonia. Okay, agenda item number 5, to receive declarations of interest, including any whipping declarations. If any members have, if you can raise your hand or using the raise hand icon. Okay, there doesn't appear to be any, Sonia.
Yes, I mean, the only thing I would say, Chairman, is that it may be wise to just clarify with any members like Councillor Mrs. Mason, who are attending via telephone, who obviously can't raise their hands in that way. Okay,
yeah, that's a good point. Thank you, Sonia. If there are any members that aren't able to use the raise hand icon, if you can just let us know if you need to.
It's their network. It's their equipment, yeah.
Okay, I'm still thinking that nobody needs to. Sorry, Councillor Mrs. Mason.
Yes, sorry.
Put yourself on mute just for a moment, unless you are declaring an interest, are you?
Well, I can't. I'm on a phone.
Okay.
I don't have that.
Thank you very much. Okay, item number 6, which is the Capital and Treasury Management Strategy for 2021-22. And this item, members, this is for to consider the report of the Assistant Director of Resources, which sets out the Council's Capital and Treasury Management Strategy for the 21-22 period, and seeks the views of the Review Committee on the approach proposed in the strategy before it's presented for approval at full Council on the 16th of February 2021. The report should have been circulated to all members, who I hope have had the opportunity to review that and have a look at it. This evening, I believe I'm going to hand over to Naomi Lucas just to introduce the report to members. And Naomi, I know you've done this a few times for us. If you can just talk us through the report, highlight any important aspects of the report that you would like to raise to members. and then answer any questions that members may have. Councillor Simon Smith, the portfolio holder, is also attending this evening's meeting. I did email you over some questions earlier, Naomi, and you have responded. I thank you for coming back so quickly on those. And if I can hand over to you, Naomi, just to introduce the report for us.
Yes, thank you, Chair. As you've set out, the report that's presented to members tonight is the Council's annual Capital and Treasury Management Strategy for the next financial year, 2021-22. And the purpose is to seek the views of the Review Committee tonight before it's presented for formal approval to full Council on the 16th of February. Members will be aware that the Council is obliged to comply with the Prudential Code for Capital Finance for local authorities, and this plays a key role in how we manage our capital finance. It also requires the Section 151 officer, which is myself, to comment specifically on the strategy adopted by the Council. The Prudential Code says that the capital strategy should set out the long-term context for any capital expenditure and investment decisions, and should give due consideration for both the risk and reward and the impact on achievement of priority outcomes. The strategy sets out the overview for the governance process for approval and monitoring of capital expenditure, and includes a projection of the Council's capital financing requirements, and sets out how the Council would make provision for the repayment of any debt, although it should be noted that the Council does not currently have any debt. The strategy also sets out the Council's approach to its Treasury management activities as set out at Section 8, and includes the criteria for how funds will be invested to ensure that the Council's monies are safeguarded from loss, and that we maintain sufficient liquidity to ensure that funds are available when needed. I just draw members' attention to Section 3 of the report, which is on page 6.3, which just provides a brief overview of the different sections within the report. I'm aware it is a lengthy report with quite a lot of detail in there, so that gives a kind of overview of what is included within the strategy, and you can see that it includes sections on, as I've mentioned, capital expenditure, capital financing, Treasury management investments, the Council's approach to any commercial investments, and how we maintain knowledge and skills for capital and Treasury management activities. So all I would really say is that the strategy is pretty much unchanged from previous years. There's been no significant change in our approach either to our capital investment programme or to our Treasury management strategy. The proposed plans for capital expenditure are detailed within the report. And yeah, I think that's probably all I was going to say, but I'm obviously happy to try and answer any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Naomi. Councillor Hookway, you did put your hand up first, but Councillor Simon Smith has indicated to speak. I think I'm going to go to Councillor Smith first. Councillor Smith, is that okay with you?
Thank you, Chairman. I would just like to take the opportunity to compliment Naomi on this piece of work. You see a similar sort of report each year, but it's not to underestimate the thoroughness with which all of the aspects of the report have been gone through. As Naomi mentioned, the Prudential Code we have to comply with, and we believe that this report allows us to meet the required standards. And just one little thing that Naomi said with regard to debt, that we haven't got any debt. I just can't stress how immensely proud we should be as a council that at this moment in time we haven't got any debt. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Smith. Councillor Hookway.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, I've just got one question for Naomi. I have been reading some reports in the press and stuff like that in relation to looking at interest rates into the future. Now, obviously, we've been dealing with very low interest rates for a long period of time now. but there was some discussion and talk that there was the possibility of interest rates going to zero or negative. Now, I don't know if the council has got any plans in place for any money in accounts or whatever that might be potentially under threat if we were in a situation where there was zero interest or negative interest on accounts. I think it's highly unlikely, but there was some serious discussion about that possibility in the future. Is there any other plans for alternative ways of investment to try and reap some better returns? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. So just to reiterate that in terms of managing the cash of the council, the priority is always firstly security of the balances that we invest, then liquidity, so our ability to draw down on those cash balances when we need them, and thirdly yield. So once we've met the first criteria of having secure and liquid investments, we then obviously look to optimise our yield within our strategy authorisations. And as councillors will be aware, as a council we have a fairly low risk appetite, and we haven't got any kind of risky investment mechanisms at the moment. So our balances are predominantly in bank accounts and low risk money market funds. Councillor Hookway is right in saying that obviously interest rates have dropped significantly over the course of the year. And in fact, we're not projecting any investment returns on our investments for the next year because interest rates are very near to zero now. However, we have got sufficient different funds open to us at the moment that's not causing any particular issue for us in terms of placing our cash balances, but that is something we're obviously keeping an eye on. As I say, we've got sufficient places to put our money at the moment. And I think it's unlikely that any of the institutions we're depositing in would go to a negative interest rate position. But as I say, we're not actually forecasting it to receive any interest income over the next financial year.
Thank you, Naomi. Councillor Hookway, I hope that answers your question. If you're happy with that, would you just mind putting the raise hand icon down for me? And we'll move on to Councillor Dray.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree that the report is very extensive and adequately explains the situation. But I've got a question in respect of item 5.4, in respect of 6.6, just a matter of clarification. It refers to the adoption of the IFRS 16 in 2021-22, and it's to do with the identification of leased premises. And I know that that work still needs to be completed. I'm just wondering if we can have some idea of when that will be, and do we have an estimated number of leases that are involved, please?
Thank you, Councillor Dray. I'll let Naomi, that was a question actually I did put to Naomi earlier as well. So I have had a response, but it was a bit late in the day. Naomi did her best. I actually asked the question quite late. So Naomi, if you can just reiterate your answer for Councillor Dray and for other members.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dray. So IFRS 16 is an accounting standard which the council was expecting to have to adopt from the next financial year, but actually since this report's been published, it has now been deferred for another year, so we won't actually have to introduce that standard until now the following financial year. However, the principle is of the council's leases that it has, which are treated as operating leases, which effectively means that they're part of our revenue budget and we pay them just year on year, and which are finance leases and essentially have to be capitalised onto our balance sheets. And that therefore potentially has an impact on our capital expenditure, which is presented in this report. So we already report on our leases within our financial accounts, and I can refer members to the relevant paragraph or sort of section in the financial accounts, which is 12A, of the 1920 financial account sets out the leased properties and values from the council. So the underlying leases the councils hold won't be impacted by this change in accounting treatment. All it will mean is that some will potentially be shown on our balance sheet rather than in our revenue budget. So it is essentially an accounting adjustment. It won't impact on the actual kind of financial position of the council. Does that answer the question?
Thank you, Naomi. Yes.
Thank you, Councillor Dray. Thank you, Naomi. Councillor Mrs Shaw.
Thank you, Chair. Naomi, can I just confirm in this regarding Councillor Hookway's statement, can I confirm in this current climate, it would be very hard to go to any bank or any other financial service to be able to get any higher interest rates because they just can't do it at the moment?
Thank you, Councillor Shaw. So I think you're right in that there's all investment vehicles are experiencing a decline in returns, but obviously there is a continuum between risk and reward, and the greater the amount of risk you're prepared to take, the greater return you could make. But I've just referred to my previous point that our strategy is a low risk strategy, and therefore our options to invest in riskier kind of investment vehicles is quite limited and not something we would choose to do at this point. Thanks.
Thank you for the confirmation.
Thank you. Have any other members got any questions at all? Just bear with me 1 second, sorry. No? Okay, thank you. Naomi, as I've mentioned to you earlier, thank you once again. I mean, nobody's asked any other questions. It is a very thorough report, as it is, or has been certainly for the last few years. Members, there are 4 recommendations on this report. Can I first ask, are many members wanting a recorded vote? If you are, would you please use the raise hand icon? And if you don't have the raise hand icon, if you can just let it be known that you do wish for a recorded vote. Okay, it doesn't appear that any members are wanting a recorded vote this evening. So if members are happy to take the 4 recommendations in one go, that's okay, isn't it, Sonia? If members are in agreement with that?
Yes, that's fine, Chairman. I think sort of looking at the report, we've got if you look at sort of recommendations, one is for noting in any event, isn't it, Chairman? And so is 2.
Correct.
And 3, it's only the last one really it's a recommendation to council. I think I would recommend that the first 3 are, if members can note that, and then vote on recommendation 4, please, Chairman.
Thank you, Sonia. Okay, members, so if we can take the recommendations 1 to 3 first. These recommendations are just to note. So if you are happy to note those recommendations, could you use the raise hand icon, please? If you don't have the raise hand icon, if you can just let it be known, or raise your hand on camera, or use the microphone.
Excuse me, I can't raise my hand. Hello?
Hello, Christine.
Yeah. I can't raise my hand and you can't see me, so you're going to have to ask me on the phone, I'm afraid.
Okay. So, Councillor Mrs Mason, are you happy?
No, I'm quite happy for it to be noted, but I didn't want to be excluded. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Mason. I'm looking down, it appears that
I can't raise my hand.
Okay. Have you recorded a note of those, Sonia?
Chairman,
members
Chairman, if it assists, because we're only noting, you know, it's easier, I think, if members just indicated they've got any issues with that, and we move on to recommendation 4.
Okay, lovely. Thank you, Sonia. Recommendation 4, members, is that the contents of this report be recommended to full council. So I think if anybody does not, or if anybody objects to sending this to full council, can you please indicate now? If you are in agreement, just do not raise your hand. Only raise your hand if you object. So I'm looking at that and nobody's raised their hand, so I'm receiving that as no objections and that everybody's in agreement to recommend that to full council.
Chairman, you might just want to check with the with Councillor Mrs. Mason, as she's not able to do that.
Councillor Mrs. Mason, are you able to, can you hear me? If you can unmute. Okay, there's no response from Councillor Mrs. Mason at the moment. I'm sure that Councillor Mrs. Mason, if she has any objection, will come back to us later on during the meeting to let me know. Okay, thank you, members. Thank you, Councillor Smith.
Thank you very much, Chairman.
I know you're leaving soon, so thank you for attending.
Thank you.
Yeah, I was saying I haven't got any objection, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can now. Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, it's all right. I can't. I can unmute, but someone keeps muting me, so I'm not sure what's happening.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Mrs. Mason. Naomi, are you staying for the next item? Thank you, Councillor.
I think if it's okay, I will leave now as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming this evening, Naomi.
Yeah, I was saying I haven't got any objection, Mr. Chairman. I don't know if you can hear me.
I can now. Thank you, Mrs. Councillor.
Yeah, it's all right. I can't. I can unmute, but someone keeps muting me, so I'm not sure what's happening.
Is anybody able to mute Councillor Mrs. Mason? Because I can hear a conversation a moment ago. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 7, which is the emergency planning and business continuity review.
Excuse me, Chair. Jo McPherson's lost connection. She's just said.
Okay, thank
I'm
you.
back now. Thank you.
Right.
Is that okay, Councillor Mrs. McPherson, can hear us?
Yes, thank you very much, Chairman.
Thank you. Bit of a testing evening this evening, but we'll get there. Item number 7, emergency planning and business continuity review. This is to consider the report of the Assistant Director of Assets and Commercial, which sets out the emergency planning information, which was previously requested by this committee. For this item this evening, we welcome the Assistant Director, Matt Harwood-White, and also Jeff Stacey, and the portfolio holder. I'm just trying to look at the screen. Councillor Mrs. Belton. Thank you all for attending this evening. Matt, if I can just start with you, and if you can just introduce the report to members in the same way that Naomi has just with her report, and just highlight any areas that you'd like to highlight, and then answer any questions that members may have afterwards.
Of course, no problem at all, Chairman. Good evening, Chairman. Evening, members. Hope you can hear me clearly. As Councillor Burton said, I'll just briefly just set the scene for the report, if that's helpful, and of course happy to take any questions afterwards with Jeff, the Council's emergency planning and business continuity officer. Chairman, this report before you this evening was in response to specific questions raised by members of the meeting of review committee in January of last year and scheduled for April of last year. Those meetings were cancelled due to the council's response to the coronavirus pandemic, and so the report has been rescheduled for this evening. It's important to point out and to note that this report doesn't address other aspects of emergency planning and business continuity, including the council's response to the pandemic, as that was subject to previous reports to this committee, the most recent one being last month. So, Chairman, the report responds to the specific points raised at that previous meeting that I mentioned, and just to highlight those within the report, they were regarding provision of training for members for emergency rest centre volunteers, information about the communications protocol, information regarding the council's out of hours number on the council's website, and introduction of a testing regime for that service. Chairman, I think that it's a relatively concise report, just given those points were asked to come back to the committee on. So hopefully the information in the report answers that clearly. But of course, more than happy to take any questions should members have any. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. No members are indicating to ask any questions at the moment. So I'll begin. I usually like to let members start, but in this instance, I will. If I can just refer you to paragraph 4.3 on 7.2. It says there that in order to relaunch the communications protocol to members, the following training has been prepared and submitted to the Standards Committee Working Group for Inclusion. Can I just ask when that was submitted to the Standards Committee and when we're expecting that to actually be implemented?
Thank you, Chairman. I would defer to my colleague Jeff for the finer detail on that. I believe only recently been submitted to member services. I believe is that the situation with that. We don't have a date as yet, I believe. Jeff Stacey will correct me if I'm wrong. I believe that has only just recently been submitted, Chairman. I'm happy to feedback separately, Chairman, if it helps in terms of dates when that could be held. I believe it's a recent addition, I believe.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, do you want
hello, Jeff. Yes, hello there.
Yeah. Yes, it's yet to go to that group to be put forward to sort of go into the programme of member training.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify, it has or it hasn't been submitted to standards?
No, it hasn't been submitted to standards. I thought it was going to be by the time the report went through, but that's not the case. It's yet to go through to the standards committee.
So do we have a date of when it will be put to standards?
I'm not familiar with the programme of meetings for the standing committee. I don't know if Sonia can help me on that one.
Chairman, if I may, I can take that one away, Chairman, and come back to you in writing to confirm a date when that will be submitted and when the training can be held, Chairman, if that's helpful.
Yep, it would be. Thank you. I know that a couple of other members have indicated, so I'll just ask this another quick question here. Just a very how do I put this? The emergency planning. Paragraph 11.3 on page 7.4 refers to emergency planning and business continuity have been the subject of internal audits and the recommendations completed. If I could just ask, who conducts the audits and makes those recommendations? When was the last one actually completed? And really, I would have thought that may have played a part in this report. Are you able to, anybody come back to me on that, Matt or Jeff?
Chairman, I can pick that up. So 11.3, so this refers to the council's internal audit, so carried out by our own internal audit team. Jim Cavani and his colleagues that carry out audits across all council services. So they produce those reports, work with officers, pull together action plans, recommendations, and we pick those up internally. And I believe reported to the audit committee. That paragraph just refers to any actions that were picked up through that report have been actioned. But as I say, that was covered in detail in earlier iterations of this report. We haven't gone into that again as it was covered previously. We've just focused on those sections to come back on. But that's a internal audit function that is carried out. That Jeff was just noting.
And when was the last one done?
The last one, I'd have to check, Chairman. It was fit on the normal rolling programme that the audit team set on their rolling programme. But I can check when the last one was done and feedback, Chairman.
Yeah, if you could, please, thank you.
No problem at all.
And my last question, which actually is not a question, I know there are some newer members on this committee and who haven't covered this subject and topic before. In paragraph 10.2 on 7.4, there's reference made to the recovering monies via the Bellwin scheme. I just wondered if one of you, just for the benefit of all the members here this evening and anybody watching, can you just very briefly just tell us a bit about the Bellway scheme, just very quickly how it works? I know we have talked about it before, and it was something that members have always been interested in and asked questions on. So if you could just give us a very brief summary, I'd appreciate that.
I'll do my best, Chairman. That is that section is within the resource implication section. So the detail of that would be probably best for Naomi to answer. It's unfortunately no longer with us, but essentially it just is a scheme that the council is able to draw down funds to recover costs, essentially. I can certainly provide a more detailed answer from Naomi if that's useful outside the meeting, but essentially it is just a process that we can draw down monies via governments initially and then claim that back via that scheme, Chairman.
No, that's fine. It was just a bit of clarity for members that may not be familiar with that,
no problem
with that scheme. Okay, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. You've already raised one of the points I was going to. As Chair of the Standards, I can confirm this hasn't come before us yet at the working group, but just to reassure members, I'm sure that with Sonia's able support, we would be able to form a working group to review this as soon as it comes through to us. Just one question, please, on page 7.4, item 12, around parish councils. So could I ask, do all parish councils have emergency plans in place? And if so, does the officer know if they're published anywhere?
Thank you, Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll let Jeff maybe answer on the detail, but Jeff certainly worked and offered to work with all parishes in the past to help them support their plans. In terms of where they're published, I'll have to defer to Jeff. Jeff, you could maybe pick up on that for me.
Yes, it is very much the local arrangements, emergency planning arrangements for each of the parish councils is geared to what works for them. I don't believe many of them actually publish their plans. Most of them are sort of internal type of plans. One of the key things is knowing who to get to be able to contact and having those points of contacts. So there are issues with publishing that sort of detail. So mostly it's they're sort of internal parish plans, which they share with me so that we can work together in an emergency.
Chairman, may I come back?
You certainly can, yep.
Thank you. That's all really actually didn't answer my question about how many parishes have actually got these plans. And if they're not published, I think the officers just explained that really they should be. So is there anything we can do to encourage them to, even if it is that initial advice for residents as a point of contact?
Chairman, I know colleagues and Jeff have worked closely with parishes. We'll certainly encourage them to publish and continue to work with them. But I think as Jeff has set out, it certainly is it's for them to publish those reports and to do that in the right way. But certainly we'll support them in drafting them and advising them, Chairman, Councillor McPherson, to how best to do that, using Jeff's experience and expertise to support them for that.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dray.
Thank you, Chairman. The report refers to emergencies and major emergencies, and I think I understand the difference in this context. But I'd be interested to know the number of out-of-hours emergency calls we've had, say, in the last 12 months. And in the event of a major emergency, whose responsibility would it be to call that as a major emergency?
Chairman, Jeff, could I ask you to just briefly walk members through how we categorise emergency? There was a section of a previous report where you set out the various standardised categories of emergency. Be able just to highlight that for us, please, Jeff?
Yes, I think the key thing really is what they call a major incident. That can be declared by any agency, and it's really defined by the fact that it is something beyond their resources and capacity to deal with. So they're asking for mutual aid. You may be aware the most recent case, pardon me, the most recent case was the problem in the response to coronavirus by the hospitals, and they were becoming overwhelmed, so asked for assistance from other agencies. So it was declared a major incident through the Essex Resilience Forum Strategic Coordinating Group, and they were given help. And in fact, that help has enabled them. You'll soon be seeing a declaration that we've now moved back from that state of being in a major incident. So it's major incident is where an organisation can't cope with its own resources and is asking for mutual aid.
Thank you.
Sorry,
does that answer your question, Councillor Dray?
It does, yes. There was the other question as to the number of out-of-hours emergency calls. Do we know?
Oh, yes.
Number?
The emergency calls, again, we have different sort of levels of calls which are dealt by our out-of-hours sort of facility. Yeah, I'd have to sort of go through the figures. There are certain categories of calls that come through which, if they're dealt with successfully by the out-of-hours people, we don't even sort of log. And then there are others, if they need action, it's those are the ones that are logged and pass through. I would have to ask for figures on that. They do a report which give the figures of the ones where they've had to take action. But as an indication, they're usually dealing with the sort of couple most evenings.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Stacey, and thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dray. Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a follow-on actually from Councillor Dray's question, paragraphs 5.1 and 5.2, talking about the out-of-hours number. I know that it's entitled Prominence of Out-of-Hours Numbers on Council website. My question was going to be more around the sort of acknowledgement that perhaps we shouldn't have to, but sometimes you have to spell out to some people how they can contact the council, because a lot of people don't go onto the website or they don't know how to use the website. And I wondered if we advertise out-of-hours contact details elsewhere, so maybe through social media or the like. And forgive me if you're only referring to the council website, because I know the paragraph's entitled that, but I just wondered if that was the case, particularly with the pandemic, and whether there's been an increase with that. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you.
Yeah, shall I answer?
Who are we going to, Jeff?
Yeah, I can answer that one if you like. Yes, the question in the report was relating purely to the prominence of the number on the council website, but yes, it is advertised in sort of including on the door of the council offices and things like that. So there are other ways that it's come through. We also did some work following this suggestion to make it come up in other searches, so not just being on the council website, but if you search through, say, a Google search or something like that, then you'll come up with emergency numbers for the council as well. Yes, I mean, it's not really an opportunity to sort of advertise it on social media as such, unless we were trying to bring calls in relation to a particular incident, in which case that would be done at the time in relation to that particular incident. But no, it's not done on a routine basis as far as I'm aware. on social media.
Okay, thank you for that. Councillor Milne.
Yeah, just following on from the question about the parishes, I think there possibly looked to be a possible mood amongst this committee towards nailing down an agreed management and publishing plan with the parishes. Not saying, well, some write one, some don't, but I know who to talk to, because we can get disasters that can come on us quite bigly, quite largely, like environmental disasters. We've got a nuclear power station north of us. We can have something really big that happens. We've got a pandemic at the moment. And it's a question really of all right, knowing who to talk to, but knowing that inside the plan of that person you're talking to, there's a possibility of some sort of support and who they would call on and what they've got, if you know, means resources. So just to look at it with more structure, really, than just saying, well, right, I can ring somebody. Because if you can't get hold of them, where are you going to go then? You know, you need to perhaps look at it's not a lot of work, but just a bit of a belt and braces approach, and looking at the standards in the parishes as well to help them, which you do, you say you do, but just to see a bit of structure around it. That's just my view. That's it. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Milne. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one point really is on this emergency numbers and what have you. Well, I know we're in a pandemic, but we just had 2 floods basically in this locality where I live. To be perfectly honest, our response wasn't very good in as much as to help the resident. It was more of phone the fire brigade, they'll pump you out sort of thing. Which comes to me like for sandbags and that sort of thing that I don't know if we have a location for those inflatable sandbags that inflate when there's water's hitting them. But I do know there are some with the Rayleigh Town Council, but do we have any locally for flooding? As we already know, it definitely does flood around this area, not so much anywhere else, but do we have a location for these emergency kits, if you like, or from who do you contact?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stanley.
I can't explain myself very well, but it's all to do with emergency and where is it sort of thing? You know, have we told residents where to go in the case of that sort of emergency to pick up these sort of things before the emergency happens?
Okay, thank you, Councillor Stanley. Matt, are you wanting to come back on that specific point that Councillor Stanley raised?
If that's helpful, please, Chairman. Yes, it was just
yes, thank you.
Just to flag, the council has a flood forum, as some members be aware, just to pick up on that. So we coordinate. Flooding is a key issue. We've reported on that before in previous reports, and so the council takes a coordination approach of those lead authorities. So the Lead Flood Authority, Essex, Environment Agency, Highways, and other partners, putting those together. You know, it definitely is a multi-agency approach in terms of flooding. You know, that's why the flood forum was pulled together. So that response is best coordinated through that group, of which the council is a key partner, of course. So our overall approach to that is coordinated from that group. That hopefully that answers that query, Chairman.
Chairman, it doesn't quite answer my query in effect that when you've got something happening to you and it's near dire straits, where do the residents go? I personally have had phone calls myself for flooding areas, but I don't know where I would get the equipment or whatever it is from RDC.
Okay, Councillor Stanley, that's fine. Can you actually, if you wouldn't mind, if you could just try and make your actual query or your question a little bit more specific, so that somebody, either Matt or Jeff, can attempt to come back and answer it. I think I'm kind of getting the point you're raising, but
can I indicate as well? Thank you.
Yeah, sorry, Councillor Mrs. Mason, I have got a note here to come to you after Councillor Sperrin was due to talk to ask. So okay. I will make a note. You've got a question. So if I can just come back to you, Councillor Stanley, just to give you the opportunity.
Yes, sorry. I was in.
Are you able to specify your question just a little bit better for me?
What I'm trying to say, that RTC have a store, if you like, that residents can go to through a councillor at RTC. Where have we got a store, or whatever it is, where we can contact somebody to get that equipment for emergencies, apart from being told, oh, well, contact your local forum, but the flood's already happening, sort of thing. So it's no good contacting the local forum because it's no good doing that, sort of thing. What I'm saying is, you've got an emergency, it's there, right in front of you, an emergency.
Right, thank you, Councillor Stanley. Matt, I think what Councillor Stanley is trying to get at, if a member of the public did phone and reported, are you able just to very briefly summarise what you would look to do or what you would look to implement and where you would go?
Of course, Chairman. I think Jeff's probably best placed to answer that one in terms of our specific response. We do publish that on the website, but to give a brief response to that, Jeff, can I ask you to comment, please?
Sorry, a little trouble there getting off the mute. Yes, I mean, the short answer, to be honest, is that we are not resourced to provide a 24-hour emergency service. That's what the emergency services are there for. No, we have no sandbags. We have no staff who could deploy sandbags. If not that sandbags are particularly helpful anyway, that's one of these myths that you can do anything much with sandbags. So where we do concentrate on is through things like the Flood Forum, where we can look at more at the prevention and protection for future events, because we just haven't got either the resources or the facilities for an emergency response.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. So essentially what you're saying is that if a member of the public did report, for example, a flood, as Councillor Stanley has detailed, we would really be more of a kind of a central point to coordinate with emergency services in dealing with that problem. Is that correct?
Yes, the emergency services would lead an emergency response. We would certainly look to do what we could to assist them. So if, for example, there was a requirement to evacuate people because they'd been flooded, then we would help through our rest centre procedures to find somewhere for them to shelter, help them to find alternative accommodation if they were unable to return to their homes. So it's that sort of support that we would give. We wouldn't take on the role of the emergency services.
Okay, thank you, Jeff. Councillor Spearing.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to reassure Councillor Wilkinson, if a resident can't get hold of Rochford District Council, they will get hold of their ward councillor or any councillor they can happen to find. As I was contacted this weekend on a potential flooding issue between myself and Councillor Newport and Councillor Stanley, we addressed the issue. But rest assured, Councillor Wilkinson, residents will find somebody to phone. And if that happens, then we pretty much all pull together and get the issue resolved to the best of the residents' solution. But they will get hold of someone, rest assured.
Thank you, Councillor Spearing. Councillor Mrs Mason.
Thank you, Mr Chairman. Can you confirm you can hear me?
I can hear you, yes, yep.
Excellent. Obviously, I can't see or hear. I'd just like to go back to the point that Councillor Stanley raised, and I think he's got a fair point. I'm sure many of the more senior members will remember the last time we had serious flooding in this area. The RDC, via a previous leader, advised residents to go in the middle of floods to B&Q to collect sandbags. I would have hoped that this council has moved on for that and would consider being more proactive for its residents. Sandbags might have a limited use, but at least they give reassurance. They do have some use and they should be there, available for our residents. Now, as a council, we are aware of the areas that are likely to flood in our region. We know where the potential risks are. I don't think it would be unreasonable to have a small store for residents to access, or even for councillors to access, should there be a very localised emergency. Can I ask that this is referred back to the Flood Forum to look at this again? We should be supporting our residents, especially when it's something as disastrous and distressing as flooding. So can I ask for that to go back to the Flood Forum for them to consider Councillor Stanley's point? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Mason. Matt, is that something you could take up?
Chairman, very happy to take that back to the Flood Forum and raise that, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you very much. Councillor Mr Shaw.
Sorry, Chairman, I was having trouble muting. Going back to the sandbags, I know that Stanbridge Parish Council do hold a stock of emergency sandbags, and perhaps other parishes could do the same.
Thank you, Councillor Mr Shaw.
Certainly it'd be up to the Flood Forum to coordinate that, I think, and that's a very helpful information.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Mr Shaw. Councillor Gooding.
Yeah, on the subject of the flooding, I just would like to know when the next Flood Forum will be, please.
Thank you. Matt, is that something you can answer or give us an idea of?
Chairman, I can confirm that this week we've been making contact with partners to call a meeting of the Flood Forum. We don't have a date as yet, but Jeff and colleagues are coordinating only this week to arrange one. So that will happen very shortly, Chairman.
Lovely, thank you. I had Councillor Mrs Shaw first, actually.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to actually ask the same question as Councillor Gooding, but going on from that and Matt's answer, I appreciate you're looking about doing a meeting, but we're getting some more heavy weather coming in within the next couple of weeks. Is there any time we can get it done quickly, sooner rather than later, please?
Chairman, we are reliant on partners, of course, to come back to us. We will push that as quickly as we can. We are reliant on partners to come back to us. But as Jeff has said, the Flood Forum is about coordinating our overall response with all our partners to this. So we'll certainly push that through. I know Jeff is picking up and working with partners too. We do take a coordination role of the group, and we will make contact, continue to make contact as soon as we can.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs Shaw. Yeah, Matt, if you could do it, and maybe just stress Mrs Shaw's point that sooner may be better than later. Councillor Stanley.
Thank you, Chairman. Just one point. The Army tend to use an awful lot of sandbags, as you noticed on the floods up towards the Midlands. They used an awful lot of sandbags, and they actually held back some of the rain, some of the water that was flooded everywhere. But these sandbags that I'm talking about don't actually hold sand. They only inflate when there is water present. So they are flat packs almost and won't take up a lot of room. One of our councillors did have a few of them and was able to take them round to a resident to help them out of the problem. And also we was offered some sandbags from RTC's own store, which was in the grounds, in their garage, from Councillor Spearing, which was very kind of him to offer.
Thank you, Councillor Stanley. I don't think there are any other questions. Obviously, I think Councillor Mrs Mason has asked for her suggestion to the Flood Forum, which Matt, you've confirmed you will do, and obviously look to try and arrange a Flood Forum meeting as soon as possible. The rest of the report is just for members to know. One thing I would say, this is the second time that this has come before the review committee when, or since I've been a chairman, and I do think whilst the report is fundamentally good and I understand it and fairly comprehensive, I would like to see in future reports just a little bit more data. We have touched on it this evening regarding number of calls, statistics with regards to how many of those calls have then gone on to be actioned, which ones haven't. And I would just be interested to see a little bit of data about how often this service is being used and the results of that. Is that something you could maybe look to do in future reports for us?
Chairman, it's absolutely fine. We have regular logs, and Jeff has regular conversation with the care line provisions. So I'm more than happy to include some stats in terms of numbers of calls, follow-up actions, outcomes, themes.
I think it would just be useful for members, and I think it would just give members a bit of a better idea of exactly how important this service is. I think we know the importance, but how often it's being used. I think it would just give members a clearer picture of exactly what this does for our residents.
No, I'm more than happy to take that away, Chairman.
Thank you. I've just noticed Councillor Williams, did you want to ask a question?
Thank you, Chairman. As a visiting member and as portfolio holder for the environment, I can give you some information. I have requested from ADs and Jeff to organise a flood forum as soon as possible. I'm confident they'll do that as quickly as they can. We also had issues this weekend down at Shoebury, Great Wakering, regarding possible floods. And I have to say the Environment Agency and Anglian Water were there much more quickly than we were. So the residents do know what to do. The people that are under threat do tend to know where to go. And yeah, just to keep you advised of that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. And Councillor McPherson.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm ever so sorry. I'm just going to comment on what Councillor Williams has just relayed. Yes, residents do know what to do, and they did in Wakering. But when we've got somebody ringing the Environment Agency every half hour from 3:30 a.m. till 6:30 a.m. until she finally got through to them, and then continuously calling them so they knew where to go, what to do, etc. And that isn't the only resident. There was quite a few. They shouldn't be doing that. This is why we've got a flood forum, to bring these agencies together. So, yep, the sooner the better, especially with the forecast of rain. I don't want my residents having to go through that again. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor McPherson. Actually, I'm sorry, members, just one last question that I did actually have, and I've just seen it. On 6.1, page 7.3, it gives members a bit of information there and says out of hours emergency calls are taken by our partners, Tendring Care Line. Just a quick question about that. Is that a contract with Tendring? And if so, what's the kind of frequency or duration of that contract? And is it up for renewal? Are you happy with it?
Yeah, Chairman, yeah, it was part of a procurement process. So Tendring Care Line won that process. Jeff can answer how long was left on the contract. It was renewed a couple of years ago, I want to say, Jeff, but Jeff went into detail. But yeah, formal tendering process with them, and they answer as Rochester District Council, so it's very clear, upon answering who they're operating for. Jeff regularly monitors that contract. He provides a detailed pack so they know what information to give, and that pack is developed from the information that service leads provide, essentially, so they know the detail of the sort of detail to provide initially, and Jeff provides training with them so they're familiar with the district. So yes, I mean, we'll always room for improvement in all contracts, of course, but yes, it's part of Jeff's monitoring of that contract. Jeff, I think we're about halfway through that contract, are we?
No, we're actually coming towards the end of it. So we'll be going out to contract again later this year.
Thank you, Joe.
Okay, I get the impression from the report that you seem relatively happy with the current partners tendering Careline.
Yes, broadly speaking, yes. As I say, always room for improvement, but from the information we've got so far and what we've done with them, yes, relatively happy.
Lovely, thank you. Okay, members, the recommendation is to note the contents of the report. Are members happy to do that? If you are not, if you can just indicate either by the raise hand icon or another way, but if you are happy to note, can you just indicate you are? Yeah. Lovely. Thank you very much. Okay. Jeff, Matt, you're more than welcome to stay. I don't know if you are intending to, or if you want to leave. Thank you for coming this evening.
Chairman, if it's okay with you and the members, I'll leave the meeting now. But thank you for your time.
Thanks for coming.
Thank you. Take care.
Okay, members, agenda item number 8, which is the key decisions document. Hopefully everyone's had a chance to have a look at that document. There are 3 items on the key decision document. The first one is 7/20, and I think Councillor Mrs Mason, I know we did this last time. Would you like me to just read out the subject matter for you? Okay, I think Councillor Mrs Mason.
You've lost her.
Yeah, just temporarily gone. Okay, I think just for the sake of the recording, I'll just read that out quickly. So the first key decision, which is 7/20, disposal of former redundant Crown Hill public conveniences, and this is the subject matter is disposal of former redundant Crown Hill public conveniences subject to marketing and granting permission for a future leasehold agreement. The decision for that is due, or this is due to go to the executive in March. Any members have any questions regarding that? No, okay. The second is 10/20, and this is the waste collection and street cleansing contract. This is to agree arrangements in respect of the waste collection and street cleansing contract beyond the 21-22 financial year. I understand that a report is on the agenda for the executive, which is scheduled for tomorrow. Any members, any questions? Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you, Chairman. Please shoot me if I've got this the wrong way around. We discussed, it may not have been the last meeting, maybe in the meeting before, but we discussed the waste contracts and street cleansing. Is this report that's going to the executive what we discussed, or is there a further report that's going to them that's then going to come to us before full council? Have I got that the wrong way around?
My understanding, and I might have to refer to Sonia, but I thought my understanding was that this is what we discussed.
Right, good. That makes sense then. Thank you.
Is that correct, Sonia? Do you know, or would you be able to seek clarification for Councillor Wilkinson?
Yes, I can. My understanding is that is what was previously discussed. It's all around the procurement process for those contracts, and I can provide further clarification outside the meeting if members would like.
Okay, Councillor Spearin, you may be able to address that.
Thanks, Chairman. Yeah, if there is any changes, Councillor Wilkinson, I haven't spotted them. By and large, it is exactly the same. I think it's one of these situations. I think we've covered just about every option that we can possibly do, but a lot of the situations that we're put into the executive is not set in cement yet. There's so many things that we're still waiting for government directives about green waste, regarding funding for new trucks, going carbon neutral. So the document being presented to executive is, as we said, discussed, but it isn't set in stone. There are still lots of negotiational areas in the document. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Spearman. That's really helpful. Is that okay, Councillor Wilkinson?
Yes, thanks very much. Yeah, it makes perfect sense. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, the third key decision, which is on the document, is 11/20. That's the voluntary sector grant allocations for 2021-22. And that's to agree funding allocations from the voluntary sector grants pot. I understand a report is due to go to the executive in March, and that will be followed by a portfolio holder decision on funding allocations. Councillor Hookway.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Obviously, in light of the current situation, I know in the past that there was member involvement in relation to the allocation of this particular pot of money. Is member involvement going to be part of the process this year with regard to how the funds are allocated out to all the various different applicants?
Thank you, Councillor Hookway. That's not something, unfortunately, I don't think I'm going to be able to answer this evening. Sonia, is that something that we could take away from this meeting and ask Louisa?
Yes. I think at this stage the best thing I can suggest is if I go away and talk to the Assistant Director Louisa Moss and update members outside the meeting.
Thank you, Sonia. Is that okay, Councillor Hookway?
Yes, fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Any other questions, member, on the key decisions document?
Mr. Chairman, I'm afraid I've
Yes.
got the same problem as at the last meeting, in that I haven't had this document. At the last meeting afterwards, I spoke to two officers. Neither of them knew how to obtain the document on the council's website. I asked them to advise me, and I must admit I've overlooked it. I've been busy. No one's advised me. No one's come back to me on that, and I haven't managed to see it. And as you'll be aware, the connection dropped out, so I've only just managed to get back into the meeting. So could you just very roughly run through the key decisions document, because I've no idea what's on it. And I would ask again for the officers to advise me how to access that.
Chairman.
Yes, Councillor McPherson.
Point of order. Is this really necessary? We've just literally been through this document again. It's no fault of any member here that any phone line failed. And also the key decisions document, I did explain at the last meeting, right hand side, menu, fourth item down, key decisions document, they're always stored under there, always have been.
Well, I've asked the officers, they couldn't find it and they couldn't advise me, two senior officers. So, and I'm afraid your directions don't help me when I'm looking at something totally different. At the moment, you'll appreciate that the council's equipment's failed. I'm having to come in on the phone. For some reason, the phone disconnected. I've missed part of the meeting because of technical issues. I'm just merely asking for a very brief summary of part of the meeting that I've inadvertently missed, Councillor McPherson. I mean, if that causes you offence, I'm sorry, but I would just ask the Chairman just to give me the titles so I know if there's anything that I should be aware of. It's perfectly courteous and reasonable.
Thank you. Thank you. I don't think it's causing Councillor McPherson any offence. I think she was just trying to be helpful. I will just
well, if she'd like to be helpful after the meeting, as I said last time, after the meeting, then and to assist me, as the officers haven't been able to, then I would appreciate that. But I don't think the time for technical advice and for technical instructions in a meeting is very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Knowing Councillor McPherson, I don't think she'll have a problem doing that at all for you.
No, it's fine. Thank
That's
you.
wonderful.
Thank you. So just very quickly, I am just going to run through the titles of these, Councillor and Mrs Mason.
Yeah,
the first key decision was regarding the disposal of former redundant Crown Hill public conveniences.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, aware of that one. Yeah.
second key decision is regarding waste collection and street cleansing contracts. And the third key decision was the voluntary sector grant allocations for 2021-22.
Presumably that's being done with group leaders. I don't know how that's being done.
Well, at the moment, Councillor Hookway has raised a question, and we feel that the best option at the moment is for Sonia to go back to the Assistant Director, who is Louisa Moss, to ask her or to answer that question. So I think, Sonia, if we could just also include there, just ask Louisa Moss whether or not that involves group leaders.
Okay, thank you. And thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Mason. Agenda item number 9, which is the work plan. Again, members, hopefully you've all had a chance to look at this. We're coming to the end of this this municipal year, so we've only got 2 meetings left. The 2nd of March, where we will be looking at community safety partnership, an update on animal welfare licensing, and April's meeting, which is the 13th of April, which will be the approval of the review committee's annual report.
Mr. Chairman, can I indicate?
Yes, Mrs. Mason. Yep.
Yeah. No. Okay. Thank you.
Yep.
Just two points on the work plan. Last year, the approval of the review committee's annual report, we didn't have an opportunity to approve it. So can it be circulated quite early to ensure that members, if they have any questions, they can do so? I know it was a difficult situation last year.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, just to answer that,
I'm not criticising. I'm just asking, just make sure that we do get it in time, because last time it wasn't completed at the meeting, and it was sent through to full council without being circulated to members, which.
Yeah. No, it's still on the agenda, Councillor Mrs. Mason. It is still on the work plan under additional items, so it is still there. So it can be carried over and will be reviewed as soon as we're able to. I am liaising with officers. They know that this is something I've mentioned, and we have discussed it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. The other thing, just for information for the committee, you'll be aware there's a working group for the open space management. Unfortunately, the officers have not been able to provide the reports that were commissioned last January. I mean, a year ago, last January. We're still waiting for those. I'm expecting to get them, or I'm hoping to get them we have had some information, but not the information we're requesting. Once that information is available, a meeting date will be set as soon as possible. But there's no point in us holding a working group without the documents that we've requested. So that's just to update you on that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Mason. Any members, any questions with regards to the work plan? Doesn't appear to be the case. And that then brings the meeting to an end at 8:45. Thank you, everybody, for attending this evening. Take care. I hope you all stay safe, and I'll see you all soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.